I am here with Elon Musk. He's getting everything ready on Twitter Spaces, so join us there as well. But of course, you can just watch us live here at the Gigafactory in Austin. Thank you for allowing us to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's quite something to just sit and watch for quite some time.
Yeah, this is actually where I don't actually have an office here. I either walk the floor or I hold meetings in this room. This room allows me to see what's going on with production while I'm holding meetings.
Is there one particular production that you focus on when you're here, or that you sort of your eyes always go to, or you actually walk over to?
Well, this is the end of line that we're seeing here. So if cars aren't moving, that means there's some blockage upstream, and then I can go and see what that blockage is. So I think we might be on a break right now. But if vehicle end of line is not moving, that means there's something upstream that's wrong.
Got it. Well, it's been amazing just to walk around the facility a bit and get a sense for the size. All right, you just finished your annual meeting. You took a lot of questions from a very eager audience. I feel like most of it you've shared before, but there was some news, and I want to start there. Advertise. You got a big applause. You didn't sound like you were going to advertise that much, but you did at least seem to open the way to saying, okay, we might consider doing some advertising. Why?
Well, I mean, I believe in listening to shareholders, and I actually was surprised by the level of enthusiasm for advertising, since we have not historically done that. But there perhaps is some good logic to it in that if we're simply sending out information via, say, the Tesla Twitter account or my Twitter account, we're somewhat preaching to the converted, and not reaching people that are not already convinced, essentially. So I think they probably have a good point. I think it's worth a try, and we'll see. We'll see how effective.
Do you have any idea how you'd like to try it, or what that would involve?
Well, I mean, I have some general thoughts about advertising. That if advertising is informative and entertaining, then it can start to approach content. So I think sometimes advertising is perhaps not informative, or perhaps in some cases a bit misleading. And in fact, we've lost some advertisers on Twitter because community notes applies to advertising too. And so if somebody advertises something that isn't perhaps a bit inaccurate, then it gets community noted, and then they get mad and stop advertising. But we care enough about the truth that we're willing to give up advertising dollars on Twitter, even if in order to have the least inaccurate source of information.
And I want to talk about that, but I want to obviously spend some time on Tesla. Again, back to ads, though. I mean, am I going to start to see Tesla ads during the NFL broadcast on a given Sunday, Monday, Thursday? The NFL's over.
Well, bear in mind, I mean, I only just agreed to it, so it's not like I have a fully formed strategy.
Okay. Well, how much time does go into when you think about these things? I mean, was it something you decided to do up on stage, or at least did you know coming in, I may, if this comes up, that I may go?
No, I mean, the questions are not scripted in any way.
Right.
So
in that moment, you just said, all right, we'll do some ads.
That's right.
So we're only like 20 minutes later, and I'm asking you detailed questions. You don't have any answers, I guess.
I'm not sure what the most effective thing is, except that, like I said, I believe that advertising should be informative about a product. It should be ideally aesthetically pleasing. It should be beautiful. It should have some artistic element to it, and it should be something that you don't regret watching after it's done. And I think if advertising fits those criteria, that it starts to approach content, and that you want advertising that is as close to content as possible, such that you don't regret the time you spent watching it.
Mm-hmm. But you did say something as well, which is that you've been preaching to the converted. You mentioned a few statistics, for example, about safety, about price during the meeting that may not be fully understood by the general auto buying public at large.
So a lot of people still think Teslas are super expensive because we did start out with an expensive sports car, then like a slightly less expensive sedan and SUV. But now we're at the point where the starting price of a Tesla is actually below the average selling price of a car in the United States. So Teslas are actually much more affordable than people realize. And so we should just make sure people at least know that.
Right.
And that Tesla is also the safest cars on the road in so many ways that people, actually a lot of people at Tesla don't even know. Sort of the cabin overheat protection, for example, or the fact that we continuously update the automatic emergency braking software and the way the airbags deploy. So we look at an accident, we say, is there anything we could do from a software standpoint to improve the cars that are already on the road? And then what can we update in the design to improve safety? I think that the statistics speak for themselves. This is not simply a matter of opinion. statistically
It's
safer than anything else.
You mentioned affordability. It's something you discussed during your meeting. You've also discussed it a bit on the earnings call recently as well, in relation to the Federal Reserve raising interest rates and obviously the monthly cost for a typical auto buyer. Mm-hmm. You think it's going to be a tough 12 months ahead. You've said that a few times.
Yes, for everyone, not just Tesla.
Understood.
So it's, it's simply, you can think of raising the Fed rate as somewhat of a brake pedal on the economy. So it makes a lot of things more expensive. Certainly things that are bought with credit, but then it has downstream effects on even things that aren't. So, if the car payment or your home mortgage payment is absorbing more of your monthly budget, then you have less money to buy other things. So actually, it affects everything, even those things that aren't bought on credit. So, and my concern with the way the Federal Reserve is making decisions is that they're just operating with too much latency. Basically, the data is somewhat stale. So the Federal Reserve was slow to raise interest rates, and now I think they're going to be slow to lower them. That appears to be the case.
Yeah, that may well be. We spent a lot of time talking about that, as you might imagine, on CNBC, yes. Perhaps too much. But when it comes to latency, that takes me to pricing, because you've discussed the lack of latency in your own ability to understand exactly what's going on in the market for those cars, as opposed to many of the legacy and other competitors.
We have real-time information on demand. So, so we know how many people placed an order for a Tesla yesterday. So the computer calculates that all, and literally every day we get an automated email to the exec staff that says how many people placed an order in which countries for which cars. And so we know what demand, we know what the orders were yesterday. Now you don't want to overreact to these things, because sometimes you get like little dips for reasons that are hard to explain.
Do you look at them every day?
Yeah. But like I said, you don't want to overreact to if like a week is slow or something, you don't want to overreact to that. But if you look at the trend, say for over two week span or something like that, you can see that there's this for some reason the demand is less than it was, or it's higher.
Mm-hmm. Do you adjust pricing to that? I mean, are you almost like an airline at this point in terms of kind of your dynamic pricing model?
Yes. So we basically adjust pricing to match demand, and we obviously did a big price drop in Q1. But now January is usually a terrible time for car buying. So there's seasonality to car purchases. With January is often the worst month. So we did a big price drop, and then recently we did a price increase. So as I mentioned to the audience, the reality is that all car companies make significant adjustments to price, because you've got the MSRP number, and then if demand is high, dealers will charge some premium over MSRP. If demand is lower, they will have manufacturer incentives. So you can actually see a very big difference over the course of, say, 6 months between the peak to trough of all cars. It's just that Tesla is so immediate and obvious and transparent. It's not a question of MSRP and then markups or discounts.
Right. But after your last earnings, a lot of investors came away wanting to talk about your margins and wanting to talk about your pricing. In particular, I think, you talked about vehicle cost reduction. You sort of even said it's hard to explain the profundity of technically selling cars now for no profit and still yielding tremendous economics over time.
Yes.
I'd like you to explain a little bit more of what that means. You did a bit in the meeting as well. You're talking about sort of the move, I think, from manual to autonomous and the value add that will come along with that. But explain to people why that's profound and why conceivably, not that you want to, you could sell automobiles now for no profit and still make enormous profit in the future.
So Tesla is the only car company selling cars where we believe the car is capable of achieving full autonomy with a software update. So the value of a fully autonomous car is, we think, perhaps 5 times more valuable than a non-autonomous car.
Why?
Well, the utility of a car, typically a passenger car, is going to be maybe 10 hours a week, maybe 12. If you say like somebody's going to drive an hour and a half a day on average, so maybe an hour commute per day and then an occasional long trip, but figure it's like 10, 12 hours a week is typical for a passenger vehicle. And then you also have a lot of costs associated with parking. You need a garage, or you've got to buy a parking space, or you've got to get a parking ticket at the mall. There's a lot of costs associated with cars. And now, if you've got a car that's autonomous, that can go around and essentially be like an autonomous Uber, the utility, I think, is going to be much higher. Perhaps, and this again, there's so much speculative.
I understand. We're talking about robo-taxis here, or at least what people have called, or you have called.
Yeah, like an autonomous Uber is a way to think about it. So perhaps the utility then would be on the order of 50 hours a week. This is just a guess. Say there's 168 hours a week, and probably, as a rough guess, an autonomous car will be able to be active instead of for 10 hours a week, probably in our view for about 50. But it's the same car, and it costs the same to build.
I want to understand the business model a little bit, because I'm buying the car, and instead of it parking at my lot while I'm working, it goes off and picks people up and drops them off.
Yeah.
Who's making the money from that? I assume that's the value add you're talking about. Is it a revenue share? Do you have this model sort of planned out specifically as how it would look?
It's been in the Tesla terms and conditions for quite a long time.
Oh, it has.
So the owner of the car would make some amount. Who knows what it would be, but perhaps it could be a 50-50 split or 70-30. I don't know. But the cars are if you buy a Tesla car, it can only be used in a Tesla. It cannot be used in someone else's time. So that means that if the car is able to be used 5 times as much, Tesla is likely to make basically 2 or 3 times the original value or sale value of the car in robotaxi revenue.
Right.
This is gigantic. As I said, it'll be like selling cars for software margins, because in fact it is software.
Right.
Instead of effectively having, say, 25% margins, it might be 70% or more. The free cash flow associated with that is actually truly a staggering amount. The best analysis that I've seen thus far about this is from Kathy Wood's firm, ARK Invest.
Kathy, well.
Yeah, she's great.
Yep. I would assume you like her, obviously. She's been a huge proponent of your stock for many years. Was right, by the way, very early on.
She was right.
Yeah.
So I thought she was being optimistic, but she turned out to be, in fact, almost spot on.
Yeah. And I am familiar somewhat with her analysis. What a lot of investors come back to, or everybody, is your promises of full autonomy. And you seem to be saying, again, it's close. You said it before. You know that.
Yes. No, I mean...
You said it in 19, I think about 20. And
I've certainly been... if I guess I have somewhat of a pathological.
Well, it works, by the way, because you don't end up with this unless you're optimistic. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, who would try to do this and rockets if they weren't pathologically optimistic?
No, you'd have to be.
So there's a double-edged sword, I guess.
But do you ever say to yourself, all right, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here? I mean, when you said, again, we're going to have full autonomy.
No, I didn't say we will. I said, I think, in my opinion, we probably will.
Okay. Right. There's a number of qualifiers there. I think, in my opinion, we probably. So what do you think, in your opinion, you probably will? When?
I mean, it does look like it's going to happen this year.
Why?
Well, we're now at the point where the car can drive on highways and in cities with, and where a human intervention is extremely rare. I was able to drive for several days, just dropping a navigation pen in random locations in the greater Austin area with no interventions. And the same in San Francisco, which is a very difficult place to drive. So, I mean, you got bus lanes, one-way streets. So it's quite a challenging homeless situation.
You were driving recently in San Francisco, or the car was?
I have been doing that quite a lot because of Twitter's headquartered.
Of course. Maybe less, maybe a little less soon.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. But finish your point, though, in terms of why you feel why you're optimistic.
I'm optimistic for that reason, which is that I've actually never, this is the first time I've had a situation where there's been several days in a row picking random destinations and having no safety-related interventions. The first time ever.
I want to get to a lot of other topics, but I am curious on Tesla in particular. One thing I haven't heard you discuss is the impact on your business of the Inflation Reduction. At least I haven't heard it. Maybe you've discussed it. Adam Jonas, who follows your company at Morgan Stanley, said, "We believe the IRA is so advantageous to Tesla in terms of absolute dollars versus the legacy OEMs, it could equal as much as 45% of current earnings per share. Is the IRA going to be usually beneficial to your company?
I'm not sure it's going to be that beneficial. There are significant advantages for having domestic production of batteries, which I think is important for strategic reasons. I think as we move to an electric transport economy, I think it's important for the United States to have some independence with respect to battery production, including all of the precursors necessary for a battery. So the IRA strongly incents that, and I think that will prove to be something of important of national strategic importance in the future. So I'm not sure I would say it's as good as, say, a 45% increase in earnings per share or 40%.
Is it significant?
It's helpful.
Though?
Yeah.
It's helpful?
I would say maybe it's half that or something.
Okay, but I mean,
still
20% is quite significant.
Yeah.
Have you mapped it out at all? Do you have a sense? I mean, obviously, you talk about storage, for example, which is so important. You spend time on that as well. The mega pack, is it beneficial in that particular area beyond, obviously, the credits, the tax credits that certain people get for buying a Tesla?
Yeah, there's really two parts to the IRA. There's the incentive for battery manufacturing. And it's really quite a detailed. It's actually a very well written bill in that it really makes sure that you can't game it. So you actually have to build the batteries in the U.S. and you actually have to build the precursors to the batteries. But if you do, it is I believe $30 at the cell level and $15. That is, and then the consumer tax credit for EVs, provided they are built in the U.S. And that the pack is built in the U.S.
Yeah.
So now this is really the first time that we've actually had the first time in many years that Tesla's actually had the consumer tax credit.
Yes.
Because we actually exceeded the limit for the consumer tax credit several years ago, and so up until December or until January this year, I should say. There was no consumer tax incentive to buy a Tesla, but there was for the other car companies because they've not made that many electric cars.
Right, they didn't reach their.
Yeah.
Before I wrap on Tesla, I would like to get to China, which is obviously an important market for you. I noticed that chart you put up. BYD is the only company that seems to be making money so far. Are you concerned at all about ruthless pricing sort of at the low end in the Chinese market and what that will mean to your market share?
Currently a limitation with is the production rate of our Shanghai factory. It's not demand. So so that's there's some constraints on our ability to expand in China, and so we're making as many cars as we can. It's not a demand issue.
And you're going to be making batteries soon as well.
Yes. For the mega pack, for mostly for non-US markets. So.
Are you concerned at all about the growing belligerence between China and the US?
I think that should be a concern for everyone.
I think you're right. I think it is shared by many people who run large organizations and smaller ones. Do you think, for example, China will make a move to take control of Taiwan?
The official policy of China is that Taiwan should be integrated. One does not need to read between the lines. One can simply read the lines.
Do you think?
So I think there's some inevitability to the situation.
That would not be good for Tesla, conceivably, or for any company in the world, Frank.
Yes, for any company in the world. I think almost no one realizes that. The Chinese economy and the rest of the global economy are like conjoined twins. It would be like trying to separate conjoined twins. That's the severity of the situation, and it's actually worse for a lot of other companies than it is for Tesla. I mean, I'm not sure where you're going to get an iPhone, for example. Apple's recently started doing some sort of small amount of production in India, but it's tiny compared to.
It's tiny. Not to mention an advanced semiconductor chip if they take over Taiwan Semi.
Correct.
So you design your own chips, but you manufacture on Semi too, right?
We do some. We use Samsung and TSMC,
but you seem to think it's likely to happen.
I'm simply saying that is their policy, and I think you should take their word seriously. They mean it.
Your time, I think you've said, in fact, some of the brief conversations we've had, is one of the most valuable things in your own control. And I am curious now, and Tesla investors sort of seem to rejoice at the announcement of a new CEO at Twitter in part because they thought, well, he's going to have more time for Tesla.
That's true.
Is it true? How do you see sort of allocating your time now that you will soon no longer be the CEO?
So It was really a very, very challenging situation at the point at which the Twitter acquisition closed, because in rough terms, there was $1.5 billion of debt servicing that was added, while at the same time there was a massive cycling.
You said you were 4 months away from bankruptcy. You're going to lose $3 billion in a year, conceivably.
Negative $3 billion cash flow and had $1 billion in the bank.
No, that's not good.
No.
Anybody who knows anything about corporate finance knows that's bad.
No, I mean, I'd say like the analogy I was using was it's like being teleported into a plane that's in a nosedive, headed to the ground with the engines on fire and the controls don't work. Yeah.
And you were the guy
that's what it felt like.
You chose to get into the plane.
Well, I did try to exit the deal, and they wouldn't let me. I mean, it was a funny situation where when I first proposed the acquisition, they said, "Hell no!" They adopted a poison pill, basically saying they'd rather die than be acquired. Like they'd rather chew on cyanide. But then a few months later, they're like basically have a gun to my head saying, "No, you must acquire us." Yeah. I mean, that's quite a change.
It is quite a change. But you seem to think I can figure out a way out of this until finally, I guess you realized I can't.
It was made clear to me that the decision would not come down in my favor legally.
Yeah. All right. Well, now you have a new CEO.
Yes.
Why?
I think Linda Yaccarino.
Why?
Twitter is very much an advertising dependent business. Linda is obviously incredible at that, and she's just a great executive in general. My skills and interests are in technology. I'll continue to play a role advancing the software and getting the features and product stuff basically. Right. The general idea is Linda will operate the company and I will build products. Yeah. And I think that's a good.
And that will take less of your time.
Yeah, and I have that situation at SpaceX. Gwynne Shotwell, who's right. Amazing, operates the company, and I work in the sort of advanced technology,
right?
Sort of designing the new rockets and that kind of thing, and that's everyone should play to their strengths, and that's mine.
That's true. Although I wonder, in 2021, you said you spent most of your time on the development of Starship. I think You've also been quoted. I read, or I think I heard you say actually, most of your mental energy at certain points has been on Starship.
Yes.
So I wonder, have you been diverted from Starship a little bit and will return to it as the main focus, or is it Tesla? Again, your time, I know, having tried to schedule this interview with you.
Yeah, time triage is a real thing for me.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd say that the only real currency is time. Time is the only true currency.
So where are you going to spend the currency now that you don't have to spend as much at Twitter?
I'm going to be devoting a lot more time to Tesla. Okay. And especially on the AI development and new product development. And then I'll also be allocating some more time to getting Starship to orbit. In the case of SpaceX, what I was able to do there was to as the Starlink constellation started working, I was able to move some of the best people from the Starlink program to the Starship program. The timing kind of worked out well. We have really some of the world's best engineers at SpaceX and Tesla. Really, some incredible human beings.
There was some statistic you shared. 3.6 million people applied for a job at Tesla. I wrote it down. I didn't write it down here, so it's remembered. But was that the number?
Yeah, it's crazy. There's a lot of demand.
You have 127, almost 128,000 employees, but 3.6 applying for a job in a year.
Yes, and there's. We would only add like say 20 or 30,000 jobs. So it's sort of the acceptance rate for Tesla is it's much more difficult to get into Tesla or SpaceX than Harvard. The acceptance rate is
even lower.
Or
Stanford too.
Well, yeah, it's the acceptance rate is lower than the most demanding universities in the world. Yeah. It's insane.
Speaking of employment, though, you had 7,800 people at Twitter when the plane was nosediving. I think you're at 1,500 now.
That's
so
correct.
Roughly 6,300 people. Were they all superfluous?
No, not all.
So, do you figure out which ones aren't, or is it a little late? Sometimes it gets a little late.
Look, desperate times call for desperate measures. So there's no question that some of the people who were let go probably shouldn't have been let go because we simply did not have the time to figure out. We had to be, make widespread cuts to get the burn rate under control. So so this is not to say that, hey, everyone who is let go from Twitter is like somehow terrible or something. It's just we have to, with very little information, get the headcount expenses and the non-personnel expenses down to where we're at least break even. And we're not quite at break even yet, but we're close. We need to do it fast. And if you do it fast, unfortunately, there are going to be some babies thrown out with the bathwater. So I definitely would not want to say disparage anyone who's left.
But it's funny, I've heard from other tech CEOs quietly. They look at what you did at Twitter and they won't admit it publicly, but they say, wow, that was something. I mean, to cut that deeply and still be able to run the company. People will argue about how well or things are running. Have you heard from any of these CEOs who said, thank you for doing that, giving us sort of runway or leeway to at least make some cuts of our own?
I've heard that from a few people, and I've heard that through the grapevine, yeah. But like I said, if desperate times call for desperate measures, and unfortunately, those were desperate times.
So do you see will Linda hire people, do you think? Or are you ready for people to be hired at Twitter?
Yeah, no, I think we absolutely need to hire people, and if they're not too mad at us, probably rehire some of the people that they will let go.
And they're going to have to come into the office.
Look, I'm a big believer that people are more productive when they're in person. And really, man, the whole sort of work from home thing. It's like I think it's. Look, there are some exceptions, but I kind of think that the whole notion of work from home is a bit like the fake Marie Antoinette quote, "Let them eat cake." It's like really, you're going to work from home and you're going to make everyone else who made your car come work in the factory. You're going to make the people who make your food that gets delivered that they can't work from home. The people that come fix your house, they can't work from home, but you can. Does that seem morally right? That's messed up.
You see it as a moral issue?
Yes.
I mean, I see it more as
it's a productivity issue, but it's also a moral issue. People should get off the goddamn moral high horse with the work from home bullshit, because they're asking everyone else to not work from home while they do.
And yet
it's wrong.
There's still pushback. It's still going on. This battle is still happening. I mean, leaders of organizations, and I speak to plenty of them, I want people back. 3 days a week, they're still back. It's not clear that it's ever going to change. People are not coming back 5 days a week.
The laptop class is living in La La Land. Okay, as I said, you can't. But look at the cars. Are people working from home here? Of course not. So the people were building cars, servicing the cars, building houses, fixing houses. Making the food, making all the things that people consume. It's messed up to assume that yes, they have to go to work, but you don't. How is that? That is, it's not just a productivity thing. I think it's morally.
Although productivity is definitely impacted too, and the ability of people to learn,
I agree.
I mean, on and on. Listen, I
mean, look, people will disagree with me about this, but it's like.
So if you want to work at Tesla, you want to work at SpaceX, you want to work at Twitter, you got to come into the office.
Yes, I mean, I'm not saying. I'm saying, like, look, put 40 hours in, and frankly, it doesn't even need to be like, Monday through Friday. You could work Monday through Thursday. And I'm also not saying no one should I think people should take vacations. Like I work 7 days a week, but I'm not expecting others to do that.
How much sleep do you get?
About 6 hours.
You do? 6 hours typically?
Yeah.
No, that's not bad. I thought it would be less.
I've tried less, but my productivity, even though I'm awake more hours, I get less done.
Okay.
And the brain pain level is bad if I get less than 6 hours.
But you work 7 days a week.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually only, in terms of actually, you say like, how many days in a year do I not put in some meaningful amount of work? It's probably about 2 or 3.
Right. 2 or 3 days.
A year.
Yeah. A year. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to get to some more specific questions about Twitter that sort of have a more global aspect. And I still want to get to AI. You're going to give us some time here? Can we still?
Yeah, I think we've got a board meeting coming up, but I'm happy to give as much time as reasonably possible. I think it's maybe at 6 or something.
Okay. Well, what time is it?
It's 5:42.
All right. I'd love another 20. Can you spare another 20?
Yeah, sure.
All right. At least 20. Great. Let's talk about free speech a bit. You call yourself a free speech absolutist. You want Twitter, and this is
aspirationally.
Aspirationally, you want Twitter to be as truthful as possible. The most accurate source of information about the world. So what does that mean for how you police lies on the platform? You mentioned community notes. Is that the extent of it?
I think community, yeah. I mean, I'd say, so my overall kind of vision for X or Twitter is to be a cybernetic collective mind for humanity. This is going to sound quite esoteric and sci-fi, but if in pursuit of that objective, you want to have information move quickly, have that information be accurate, and you want to have error correction on that information. So you can think of community notes as like an error correction on information in the network. And the effect of community notes is actually bigger than it would seem. It's bigger than the number of notes. Because if somebody knows that they're going to get noted, they are less likely to say something that is false because it's embarrassing to get community.
Okay,
but and that applies even to advertisers, by the way.
Right,
we've lost that's so far $40 million in advertising
because it was misleading, or because the community notes said it was.
The community notes, they get two pretty big advertisers got community noted, and yes, I think on balance the community notes were correct. And I did say to those advertisers, look, just go on Twitter and provide some facts that contradict the community note. That's the way to deal with the community note, is to say is that the community note is saying that the ad is misleading for the following reasons. If you've got information that rebuts that note, then just add that to the ad.
Okay. We're coming up on an election. I mean, it's a ways away, but it's going to all start. President Trump is allowed back on the platform. He hasn't actually come back.
Right.
But one would imagine if and when he does, or there are others who will say 2020 election. Is that something? I assume that's not something you believe.
I think the answer is nuanced. Do I believe Biden won? Yes, I believe he won.
And you voted for it.
I did, actually.
Do you regret that?
I mean, man, I wish we could have just a normal human being as president. That's what I want. I think if we could, there's that old saying of like we're better off being run by people picked at random from the phone book than the faculty of Harvard.
Yeah,
I don't know who said that, but it was someone very wise. And I would say if we could do that for the president, that would be great. You
think that would be beneficial? So you're not happy with Biden.
Don't we all just want a normal human being to be
whatever
president?
That means, whatever. I'm not even sure.
No, but I mean,
you want somebody who's competent. That's helpful.
Yes, I think definitely somebody's executive ability is underrated. Since the president is effectively the chief executive officer of the country, it actually matters if they are a good executive officer.
Yeah,
it's not simply a matter of do they share your beliefs, and but are they good at getting things done? There's a lot of decisions that need to be made every day. Many of them are unrelated to moral beliefs.
Right,
and you just want a good executive. Because they're CEO of America.
They are.
We want a good CEO of America who's going to be an effective.
Unfortunately, we live in highly partisan times where there is war about everything, including ideas, including the truth, which gets back to it's not true that the election in 2020 was rigged. It wasn't stolen. And I wonder on the platform, when you see that, does that end up in a community note, or is that something you take more action on? And obviously, that applies to so many.
I mean, to be clear, I don't think it was a stolen election. But by the same token, if somebody's going to say that there was never any election fraud anywhere, this is obviously also false.
Yeah.
If 100 million people vote, the probability that the fraud is zero is zero. There's going to be,
of course, there's always going to be some.
A little.
But is it going to, right? I mean, the tiniest bit, perhaps. I mean, this election was audited. It was so many judges. I mean, it went on and on and on, and there was nothing whatsoever. I don't want to debate this with you. My question is more about.
I think it's important to say, like, that in any given election, even if you try your hardest, if you've got 100 million votes, there's going to be some amount of fraud that is not zero. And that it's important to acknowledge that without saying that the fraud was of sufficient magnitude to change the outcome. So my opinion would be that there was some small amount of fraud, but it was not enough to change the outcome.
Right, and by the way, it might have been either way. I mean,
there's probably a little bit of each way.
But again, it's going to be you're going to let people say that though on Twitter, and then you're going to hope that they're corrected.
They will be corrected.
They will be.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Let's talk a bit about your tweets. Because it comes up a lot. Even today, it came up in anticipation of this. I mean, you do some tweets that seem to be, or at least give support to some who would call others conspiracy theories.
Well, yes, but I mean, honestly, some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
Which ones?
Well, like the Hunter Biden laptop.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty big deal. There was Twitter and others engaged in active suppression of information that was relevant to the public. That's a terrible thing that happened. That's election interference.
But how do you make a choice? You don't see. I mean, in terms of when you're going to engage. I mean, for example, even today, Elon, you tweeted this thing about George Soros. Well, I'm looking for it because I want to make sure I quote it properly. But I mean, you know what you wrote. But you basically.
It reminds me of Magneto. This is like, calm down, people. This is not like made a federal case out of it.
You also, you said he wants to erode the very fabric of civilization, and Soros hates you. Like, when you do something like that, do you?
Yeah, I think that's true. That's my opinion.
Okay. But why share it? Why share it? Especially because, why share it when people who buy Teslas may not agree with you? Advertisers on Twitter may not agree with you. Why not just say, hey, I think this. You can tell me. We can talk about it over there. You can tell your friends. But why share it widely? I mean,
this is freedom of speech. I'm allowed to say what I want.
You absolutely are. But I'm trying to understand why you do, because you have to know it puts you in the middle of the partisan divide in the country. It makes you a lightning rod for criticism. I mean, do you like that? People today saying he's an anti-Semite. I don't think you are.
No, I'm definitely. I'm like a pro-Semite, if anything.
I believe that probably is the case.
Yes.
But why would you even introduce the idea that would be the case?
I mean, listen, we don't want to make this a George Soros interview.
No, God, no. I don't want to at all. But what I'm trying even came up though in the annual meeting. I mean, do your tweets hurt the company? Are there Tesla owners who say, I don't agree with his political position and I know it because he shares some? Or are there advertisers on Twitter that Linda Yaccarino will come and say, you got to stop, man. Or, I can't get these ads because of some of the things you tweet.
I'm reminded of there's a scene in The Princess Bride, great movie, where he confronts the person who killed his father. And he says, offer me money, offer me power. I don't care.
So you just don't care. You want to share what you have to say.
I'll say what I want to say, and if the consequence of that is losing money, so be it.
Okay, but I mean, when you link to somebody who's talking about the guy who killed children in a mall in Allen, Texas, and you say something like it might be a bad psyop. I'm not quite sure what you meant, but.
Oh, in that particular case, there was somehow that's not that the obviously people were killed, but it was, I think, incorrectly ascribed to be a white supremacist action, and the evidence for that was some obscure Russian website that no one's ever heard of, that had no followers, and the company that found this is Bellingcat.
Right.
And do you know what Bellingcat does? PsyOps.
Right. I couldn't really even follow exactly what it was you were trying to express there, so that's in part why I was curious.
I'm saying that I thought the ascribing it to white supremacy was bullshit.
Okay.
And that the information for that came from an obscure Russian website and was somehow magically found by Bellingcat, which is a company that does PsyOps.
And there's no proof, by the way, that he was not.
I would say that there's no proof that he is.
And that's a debate you want to get into on Twitter?
Yes, because we should not be ascribing things to white supremacy if it's false.
Okay. Can we talk about AI now? Sure. Actually, I want to talk about AI. Well, let me end with Twitter in the sense of Sam Altman was on the Hill today, and he said AI's ability to manipulate interactive disinformation is a significant area of concern. It's moving so quickly.
It is a significant area of concern.
And how, I'm curious as to whether you agree with that, how you see that even playing out on Twitter with people who knows, somebody could look like you and or me and use our voice. I don't know. Could be.
Oh, that is happening big time. So the reason that I'm asking people to be verified on Twitter, and that we're saying, okay, verification means you've got a phone number from a reputable carrier, which means that you've at least passed through whatever their security mechanisms are, that you have a credit card, so you now have passed through whatever security mechanisms the credit card company has, and that there's some small amount of money paid per month. That set of actions significantly increases the cost of fake accounts, and with the latest AI, it can bypass basically every test for are you a human. So then how do you know that a million accounts were created? how do you know that those are people?
I don't know. How do you?
Exactly. You have to do account verification. And the thing that makes I sort of put myself in the position of like, if it was my goal to manipulate public opinion and create millions of accounts and make it seem as though a topic was trending, and that this is actually what the public believes. But in order to do so, I had to get 1 million phone numbers, 1 million credit card numbers, and pay $8 a month,
right?
And have that all not be traceable and clustered. I'd say it's impossible. So the goal of the sort of Twitter verification is fundamentally to prevent AI manipulation of the system.
Got it. Final question on Twitter. Walter Isaacson, your biographer, he said your big goal for Twitter is disrupting the banking industry.
Well,
is that accurate?
I'd say that's a look. First of all, I don't want to disrupt something for the sake of disrupting it. It's more like if there is a better product, that's great. But I'm not out for disruption for the sake of disruption. I'm like if we can make a product that improves quality of life for people that they find more useful, that's great. What people see in PayPal is sort of a halfway. It's frankly sort of a half-baked version of what it could be. And so I think there's potential to create a more efficient financial system. And here we can get again quite esoteric into sort of information theory, but. The actual financial system today is a heterogeneous set of databases running on mainframes and COBOL that still engage in batch processing. It's really quite very inefficient. So things are still not real time, and so it's possible to have a much more efficient, homogeneous, real-time data system. Money is just information, but that's not like the only reason. It's just a thing that would be, I think, poetic to fulfill ultimately the vision that I had for X over 23 years ago,
right.
and actually see that come to fruition would be nice. But there are many other things for Twitter. It's not just financial stuff.
Well, you talk about enhancing humanity. I'm curious then about AI, which many people say will lead to great productivity gains. You showed those robots. I mean, I can imagine what they conceivably could do when powered by AI. But I'm also curious, because you've certainly been concerned, what percentage do you give the chance that it will destroy?
Well, the advent of artificial general intelligence is called a singularity because it is so hard to predict what will happen after that. I think it's very much a double-edged sword. I think there's a strong probability that it will make life much better and that we'll have an age of abundance. And there's some chance that it goes wrong and destroys humanity. Hopefully that chance is small, but it's not zero. And so I think we want to take whatever actions we can think of to minimize the probability that AI goes wrong.
And you've called for a pause, along with a number of others.
Yes, look. When I called for a friend of mine, Max Tegmark, is a physicist at MIT. Wanted me to sign on to the letter, and it's like I knew it would be futile.
It is futile.
It's futile. I knew it would be futile. I just wanted to call it like it's one of those things. Well, for the record, I recommended that we pause.
Okay.
Did I think there would be a pause? Absolutely not.
But you're starting XAI. I think that's what it, or some new AI effort. How is it going to be different than OpenAI or Alphabet?
This is not the time to this is not. We don't have enough time, and nor is this the moment to really talk about it. Okay. We will have a launch event, and we will explore the issues in more detail. But I should say that and I mentioned this at the shareholder meeting, that Tesla has actually tremendous capability in real-world AI.
Yes.
In fact, it is very far ahead of anyone.
I know people actually on Twitter prior to our interview were saying, he never gets asked about how advanced his AI is at Tesla. You always talk about the other names.
Tesla AI is, like I said, I'm not even sure who's second, frankly.
Why is that? What are people not understanding about what you have, and why are we talking so much about ChatGPT and generative AI at OpenAI and what Microsoft's going to be able to, and not about Tesla?
I don't know. I mean, people do talk about it online. I think Tesla will have sort of a ChatGPT moment. Maybe if not this year, I'd say no later than next year.
Wait, say that again. I'm sorry. You're going to have a
sort of ChatGPT moment.
Oh, you will, in terms of suddenly it will.
Yeah, suddenly 3 million cars will be able to drive themselves with no one.
Right, it goes back.
Yeah, and then 5 million cars, and then 10 million cars. So I would also say that if positions were reversed and say, well, in fact, the positions are reversed. For example, Google has Waymo, which is sort of attempting self-driving, and they are able to make self-driving work in a very limited geography with very tightly mapped streets. But as soon as anything goes wrong with those streets, like there's an accident or a parade or road construction, it stops working. Basically, Google is unable to produce a generalized solution to self-driving that works anywhere. They've been trying to do that for a long time. They've been unsuccessful. Tesla basically has that and is far more advanced than Google.
Yeah.
And so, if the positions were reversed and you said, okay, Tesla's got to produce a large language model that has output equal to or greater than ChatGPT, or Microsoft OpenAI has to do self-driving, and we flip the tasks, Tesla would win.
You'd win.
Yes.
And you have the computing power and everything else you need to do it.
Absolutely.
I'm being told we don't have that much time. Can you give me another 5 minutes? Or
yeah,
what do you think?
I think so. I do have a board meeting.
I know.
But 5 minutes is probably fine. Sure.
OpenAI. I mean, you seem somewhat frustrated with them. You were one of the big contributors early on.
The reason I am the reason OpenAI exists.
How much money did you?
So I'm not sure the exact number, but it's some number on the order of $50 million. Man, fate loves irony next level. So I used to be close friends with Larry Page, and I would stay at his house, and we'd have these conversations long into the evening about AI, and I would be constantly urging him to be careful about the danger of AI, and he was really not concerned about the danger of AI and was quite cavalier about it. And at the time, Google, especially after their acquisition of DeepMind, had 3/4 of the world's AI talent. They had obviously a lot of computers, a lot of money. So it was a unipolar world for AI. And we've got a unipolar world, but the person who controls that does not, or at least did not seem to be concerned about AI safety. That sounded like a real problem. So and then the final straw was Larry calling me a speciesist for being pro-human consciousness instead of machine consciousness. And I'm like, well, yes, I guess I am. I am a speciesist. So
you helped to the creation of OpenAI. You put in as much as $50 million.
More than helped. It wouldn't exist without me.
It wouldn't exist without you. So,
I came up with the name. The name OpenAI refers to open source. So the intent was, what's the opposite? What's the opposite of Google? Would be an open source nonprofit, because Google is closed source for profit, and that profit motivation can be potentially dangerous.
Should you have gotten governance for that money? Should you have gotten some level of control, perhaps, in retrospect?
Yeah, I fully admit to being a huge idiot here. So OpenAI was meant to be open as an open source. It was created as a 501c3, so part of it is also, in the beginning, I thought, look, this is probably a hopeless endeavor. How could we possibly compete with? How could OpenAI possibly compete with Google DeepMind? I mean, this seemed like an ant against an elephant. Which is not a contest. And I was also, I was instrumental in recruiting the key scientists and engineers, most notably Ilya Sutskever. In fact, Ilya went back and forth several times because he would say he's going to join OpenAI, then Demis would convince him not to, then I would convince him to do so, and this went back and forth several times, and ultimately he decided to join OpenAI, and really Ilya joining was the linchpin for OpenAI being ultimately successful.
So you're very disappointed in what's happened there in terms of it becoming a for-profit. Did you take any action? Sue them in some way?
I do think that there's some... Look, it does seem weird that something can be a non-profit open source and somehow transform itself into a for-profit closed source. This would be like let's say you funded an organization to save the Amazon rainforest, and instead they became a lumber company and chopped down the forest and sold it for money. And you'd be therefore like, oh, wait a second, that's the exact opposite of what I gave the money for. Is that legal? That doesn't seem legal. And if it is, and in general, if it is legal to start a company as a nonprofit and then take the IP and transfer it to a for-profit that then makes tons of money. Shouldn't everyone start? Shouldn't that be the default? And then I also think it's important to understand like when push comes to shove, let's say they do create some digital superintelligence, almost godlike intelligence. Well, who's in control? And what exactly is the relationship between OpenAI and Microsoft? And I do worry that Microsoft actually may be more in control than, say, the leadership team at OpenAI realizes. I mean, Microsoft, as part of the Microsoft investment, they have rights to all of the software, all of the model weights, and everything necessary to run the inference system.
So they essentially have a great deal of control.
At any point, Microsoft could cut off OpenAI.
Elon, I'm being told we have to wrap up. Your board has been very
Sure.
patient. I want to end on one AI question. You have a lot of kids. I have some kids. I have one who's actually soon to go into the workforce. I struggle with how to advise him about a career when this technology exists and will only improve. I'm just curious, when you think about advising your children on a career with so much that is changing, what do you tell them is going to be of value?
Well, that is a tough question to answer. I guess I would just say, to sort of follow their heart in terms of what they've interesting to do or fulfilling to do, and try to be as useful as possible to the rest of society. If we do get to the sort of like magic genie situation where you can ask the AI for anything, and let's say it's even the benign scenario. Let's say it's a benign scenario. How do we actually find fulfillment? It's how do we find meaning in life if the AI could do your job better than you can? I mean, if I think about it too hard, it frankly can be dispiriting and demotivating, because I mean, I go through. I've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into building the companies, and then I'm like, wait, well, should I be doing this? Because if I'm sacrificing time with friends and family that I would prefer to do, but then ultimately the AI can do all these things. Does that make sense? I don't know. To some extent, I have to have deliberate suspension of disbelief in order to remain motivated. So I guess I would say just work on things that you find interesting, fulfilling, and that contribute some good to the rest of society.
Well, that's a great place to end.